So taxpayer money, United States dollars that are being remitted into Somalia in part have been utilized or have fallen into the hands of al-Shabaab. Do you think that's a correct assessment?
Yes, we have plenty of evidence of that, from money directly going to al-Shabaab, but then also indirectly because they take a cut of whatever gets sent to Somalia.
So you had the Somali community who on purpose was petitioning the state of Minnesota to lower the standards to be able to make sure that fraud cannot be caught. Is that correct?
Well, they wanted to keep the standard clear and convincing, which makes it harder to disqualify people.
So it makes it harder for them to be disqualified from wasting taxpayer funds. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
What if taxpayer dollars meant for helping struggling families ended up benefiting a terrorist organization? That's exactly the explosive allegation raised during a congressional hearing where witnesses claimed Minnesota welfare fraud stretched far beyond state borders. One exchange left the room stunned, and you're about to see it. Congressman Byron pressed witnesses on whether fraud in Minnesota programs allowed money to flow overseas through informal transfer networks where they alleged al-Shabaab could receive a share. The testimony also accused state officials of ignoring warnings and discouraging whistleblowers. Watch the exchange, then we'll break down what was claimed and what it could mean.
Chair now recognizes Byron from the great state of Florida.
Thank you, Chairman. Before we begin, I have a letter to submit for the record titled Collective Request for Congressional Oversight, Systematic Retaliation and Governance Failure at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Chairman, this letter was written by the whistleblowers and has been provided to the committee. I want to submit that for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Eric, first of all, thank you for your service to the state of Minnesota. I want to refer back to your commentary about a meeting where the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Minnesota, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, came and admonished these whistleblowers. Can you go into more detail about what was said in this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. So I don't have any more detail other than what I read into the record. Unfortunately, it was obviously a public meeting, and there were hundreds of DHS employees, so Department of Human Services employees there. It was a story that's been reported multiple times on the X page, but I don't have any more details than that, other than the fact that that wasn't the only time that she retaliated.
Do you think that the Lieutenant Governor was operating outside of the purview of Governor Walz?
So it's interesting, the timing, and it was before he ran as the vice president, and so she was completely almost tied at the hip with Governor Walz at that time in history. I
think it's important for people to understand that in virtually every state in the country, the lieutenant governor is essentially chosen by the governor, and so lieutenant governors typically do not operate outside of the purview of the governor. It's kind of their job to, play QB2, if you will, to the governor. So would it be clear to state that the lieutenant governor's comments trying to railroad whistleblowers, trying to demean whistleblowers and discourage whistleblowers was at the directive of Governor Walz?
You can definitely assume that because, like I said, at that moment in time, up until the point where the governor ran for VP, she was seen at literally every press conference. She was in all the meetings. They were tied at the hip. They were always together. So if she was saying it, he had approved it. I'm certain of it.
Well, I guess you could say she's kind of a knucklehead, too. Moving on, the list of programs in the fraud in Minnesota are rampant. You have the Child Care Assistance Program. You have the Feeding Our Future. You have the Housing Stabilization Services. You have the Early Intensive Development and Behavioral Intervention. You have Integrated Community Supports. Ms. Robbins, you're the chair of the investigative committee. The depth of fraud that you have seen, were there controls in place in the state of Minnesota that could have prevented this fraud? And were these controls ignored by the Walz administration and by the Department of Human Services?
Absolutely. So we have many whistleblower reports talking about how DHS undermined ability to strengthen internal controls. So, for example, there was an effort for the Child Care Assistance Program. They have a clear and convincing evidence standard to disqualify someone from being a provider, where all the other programs are a lower standard, preponderance of the evidence. There was an effort to make this a lower standard so it was easier to disqualify people to preponderance. And the Minnesota Minority Child Care Association, which was run by a group of Somali providers, opposed it, and DHS went along with their recommendation. And in a similar vein, we were trying to reduce the number of child care employees with children that could work in these child care centers, because that was one of the vectors of fraud.
Right.
And they opposed that.
So you had the Somali community who on purpose was petitioning the state of Minnesota to lower the standards to be able to make sure that fraud could not be caught. Is that correct?
Well, they wanted to keep the standard clear and convincing, which makes it harder to disqualify people.
So it makes it harder for them to be disqualified from wasting taxpayer funds. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Roberts, I want to stay with you. I want to talk about use of funds. You've talked about some of these funds were used to buy property in Kenya.
Yes, sir.
Property in Turkey. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Remittances back to Somalia.
Yes.
I think it's important for the committee to understand that these remittances in part are used in what's called the Hawala. I want to make sure I have the terminology right. The Hawala network. Ms. Robbins, can you speak to what the Hawala network is?
Yes. So it's an informal network where someone goes to a Hawala place in Minneapolis, which is like a money exchange or a money sending site, and they say, I want to send X amount of dollars, and then there's a receiving site in Somalia, and they put take the cash out. So money doesn't cross the border. It's an order for money here that gets transmitted to Somalia.
For the time, because I'm out of time, I want to expound. In Somalia and other parts in the Middle East region writ large, a Hawala network is a bunch of money exchangers, hand to hand, not bank account to bank account.
Exactly.
And what is clear in Somalia and other parts is that Al-Shabaab, the largest Al-Qaeda affiliate in Somalia, they have their hands all through this network. So taxpayer money, United States dollars, that are being remitted into Somalia in parts have been utilized or have fallen into the hands of Al-Shabaab. Do you think that's a correct assessment?
Yes, we have plenty of evidence of that, from money directly going to Al-Shabaab, but then also indirectly because they take a cut of whatever gets sent to Somalia.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I know I'm over. Thank you for the
You
additional
just
time.
watched one of the most controversial moments from the hearing. Witnesses testified that weaknesses in Minnesota's oversight allowed widespread fraud, that whistleblowers were ignored, and that money sent overseas through informal transfer systems could ultimately benefit Al-Shabaab. Those are serious allegations that lawmakers are now scrutinizing. During the hearing, Byron argued that state leadership should be held accountable if oversight failures allowed taxpayer money to be misused. Critics say the hearing raises major questions about fraud prevention, while supporters of Minnesota's leadership dispute broader political conclusions and note that investigations are still ongoing. Whatever your political views, everyone can agree on one thing: taxpayer dollars should be protected, fraud should be investigated, and anyone responsible should be held accountable based on the evidence. If you found this breakdown informative, subscribe for more congressional hearing highlights and analysis, and let us know your thoughts in the comments.